It feels like a Friday, but it's only Thursday. It is 2 days post-election. It is, what is it? It's November 7th today. Thanks for being with us. I'm Heidi Hatch.
Mark time now?
What?
How long it was?
From the election. Yeah, we're going to mark it in days. Yes.
It is a historic moment in time.
So we're still in election week, so people are feeling all kinds of feelings. We have Speaker Mike Schultz back with us from Mara Lago, fresh from Florida, and Mara Carabello, who did a 5.5-hour marathon on the radio on election night. Glad you guys are with us. Yeah. And we're happy to have you both back in the same room because you had a bet on who won and what was going to happen. I wanted to see if you guys were going to show up with the actual items from your bet, and you came empty-handed because...
Well, I'm gonna out Mike. Mike says to me, he sees me today, and he's like, "Where's your MAGA hat?" So here's how the Republicans are rolling.
Oh, was she supposed to order her own?
I acknowledge that I lost, and I am Irish and Italian, so I don't welch on bets. But here's the news: you gotta buy the hat, buddy. I'm not buying my own MAGA hat.
I know. That's what I thought you would show up with her bedazzled hat for her.
Well, we changed it.
He's
no
over,
more bedazzled. Yeah. Bedazzled was too nice. We're going with full-on red. I did say I'll let you pick between red and pink on the MAGA hat, but we're going to go with full-on MAGA hat.
Does she have to wear it someplace to an important meeting, or what does she do with the hat? Okay, all day.
Are you picking the day?
Well, we'll negotiate that, but I think I ought to be able to pick the day.
Because if you lost, I was going to suggest...
No, we're not negotiating. See, that's why I said, okay, yes,
it's got to be an important work day, because I was assuming that if Kamala Harris ended up winning and you had to wear your white dudes...
Could you believe that
your white
shirt
dudes? Yes, that was it. What did it say, white dudes for Harris?
Yes.
I thought that with a blazer, your jeans, and some boots on the opening day of the legislature should have been like what you had to do.
The first one I picked had pink kittens on it.
Ooh.
She picks this nice, cute, bedazzled Trump hat, and then this kitten.
I'm glad you guys are calling it a kitten.
I had kitties on it.
Bedazzling is embarrassing.
It is.
I was being open to where my embarrassment meter lives, and I'll just be clear, my embarrassment meter lives in bedazzle.
Nobody would even know what that said.
It said, I heart
I know, but it was like a Levi, like it wasn't even, it didn't stand out. We needed a red MAGA hat.
Yeah.
All day long.
I have a bedazzled USA hat that I've worn for the 4th of July a couple of years, and there was a couple of years in there where it didn't induce like a vomit feeling, and I was able to do it just to be funny, but bedazzling is just bad.
It's tough.
Or we could do it on your apple bottom jeans, like on the pockets. I love Trump. Yes. Well, I'm glad you're both here and somewhat jovial, because I know after elections it can be hard. So I just want to ask, I guess reaction-wise, we're going to talk a lot of local races and presidential as well. Mara, you get to go first since things didn't go your way. How early in the evening did you know that it was going to be a bad night for Harris and that was it?
Probably around 10:30. Like, that's when you knew it was going to be rough. You didn't know, I think, for sure.
How bad?
But what you started to see is no call in Nevada. Nevada really broke late. Arizona was holding. But Georgia and North Carolina, which I don't know that I had originally even put in Harris's camp, the numbers there were too bad. And where the Georgia numbers were coming in were not good indicators.
Yeah.
But that Rust Belt's different, so you kept thinking, well, maybe that would be different. One thing I think that is interesting, I'll sort of start with my lead. I think that it absolutely has to be acknowledged that it was a decisive victory. And decisive for me is mostly that not only is it the electoral college, that it is the population as well. So it's the general election vote. So absolutely decisive. I think before Trump starts his hype machine, though, we need to remember that those 7 states are going to be won within 2 percentage points within the margin of error. And so, like Biden, Trump is going to be the president in a divided nation. So on one hand, I am not prone to want to take the wind from his winning sails. He won fair and square, but I'm starting to hear this hyperbole, which if I were the president, I would also speak in hyperbole, but this is a real divided nation, and so the winning and losing in America is still 1 and 2 percentage points, and I think that it should instruct most elected officials that you're still in a divided nation, and if it stays on task right now, Trump will actually have few electoral college votes than Biden did. So I went back because I was like, what was Biden? And Biden was at 306 and Trump was at, like, I don't hold me to this, 236, I think. And right now Trump's at 198 and Harris is at 132, maybe, something like that.
Are we talking electoral? So
Electoral.
Trump's at 295.
Yeah.
And Harris is at 226, but
and we still have Nevada and Arizona.
in Arizona,
So remember, Biden's electoral college number was 306. My only point in that is Trump decisively won, but decisive in America right now is under 2 percentage points, which bodes for all of us to just try and be nice to each other.
which is probably a good rule all the time.
Yeah.
You were on the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm sure it was a super late night if you were down at Mara Lago. When did you guys start to feel like, okay, this is our night and we're going to party and not have to go home early and say, let's cry in our soup?
Late night, early morning probably is the best way.
Yeah.
I think we got back to our hotel room about 4:30 that morning. So it was a really, really late night or early morning, depending on which way you want to look at it. But I think as we went into it, at least for me, I mean, I knew that Trump was going to win. You just knew it. You could feel it. We talked about it last podcast I was at. You could see everything starting to come together. People that were originally opposed to Trump had started to come around to Trump, not necessarily because they liked him, but because the policies of the Democrats, they felt like they had the Democrat Party, both locally and nationally, has went too far in some of their positions, and it was starting to push people away from that. So I knew going into the night that it was going to be, that Trump was going to win. At least that's what I really felt like. I had no idea that, I would say probably similar. It was probably around 10 o'clock Eastern time that I'm like, ooh, we're going to know tonight. I didn't think that was going to happen. I thought it would play out over the next 24 hours and maybe a couple days, 48 hours before we knew for sure. But I'd say around 10 o'clock Eastern time is when we kind of looked at it and said, it looks like it's going to be, we're going to know tonight.
It looked like a good party. How do you get on the Trump Mar-a-Lago invite list?
I'll tell you what, it was not easy. And it was very few. I mean, that's not a big room. The president himself, Trump, was actually there in the room almost the whole evening.
Which is weird because usually they candidates in a back room till the numbers come out and they come party, but he hung out. All right.
He came out. He was watching. I did not expect this. I thought he'd come out, he'd eat dinner, and he'd go back to the room. But he came out about an hour before we ate dinner. He ate dinner and he stayed right up until the time the whole team went to the convention center to give his speech. In front of that group, and it was really interesting, fun just to watch him. We had Fox News on the TVs and CNN on the TVs, and the audio was all Fox News, and we watched it right there along with President Trump with the rest of the nation same time. And I thought that was pretty cool. I think that's a little bit of indicative of who Trump wants to be for this next term in office. He wants to be there with the people.
With the rich, bougie people, so he wants to go.
Are you calling Schultz rich and bougie?
I am, because I sat quietly through that, but like a man of the people at a private country club with a high ticket dollar level, just one of the people, just one of the guys.
Well, I'll tell you,
hanging out at the pool hall.
There were a lot of average people in that room.
There were no average people in that room.
No, I talked to him. There were a lot of
absolutely no average people.
There were a lot of average people in that room. I'm not going to say.
You should take it as flattery. She's saying you're above average.
I am.
I'm not here to say that the members didn't have first choice, but I'm here to tell you I sat and talked with a lot of them. There were a lot of just average people that couldn't believe that they had the opportunity to be there and to attend.
Who else from Utah was there?
I didn't see anybody else there.
Mike Lee was there.
I didn't see Mike Lee in the room.
Mike Lee was tweeting all night long.
I saw him tweeting, but I don't know if he was actually there.
I don't think he was.
He said he was.
Interesting.
In Mar-a-Lago.
I
think he was
with Trump, is what he said.
Well, he could have been, but he wasn't right there.
You didn't see him.
To be honest, I didn't see Mike Lee at Mar-a-Lago, but I'm not saying he couldn't have been there, and he might. Actually, there was another room too that he could have been in. That was the more bougie room.
Was it?
Okay. Yeah. So
yeah.
There was. I did say, am I on that list to go to that room? I wasn't on that list. But again, I come back to he was in that room with everybody and watching the results. And again, I think I know Maura disagrees with this, but That's why he won this election, because he's perceived to be a man of the people.
Let's talk about lessons learned, because there always have to be lessons learned when we have a split nation. When you win or lose a race, you have to look and see what went wrong. I've been kind of shocked by some of the videos. I'm not on TikTok, but I think if you're on Instagram, eventually the TikTok videos make it your way, or Twitter. And I've seen so many people just sobbing and screaming, worried about concentration camps, or that they've lost rights that they had that they didn't have yesterday. And I'm like, what are we talking about? So there's been kind of an extreme emotion. I'm guessing that will all die down, and then we'll focus on what's going to happen. What, if anything, do you see that Democrats did wrong, aside from maybe not holding a primary and running it like you would a normal race?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know for me if that's the right question, right? Because I don't think when you're winning and losing by the margins, it's sort of more analysis, not what you did wrong. I think the circumstances were interesting. One has to question the Biden to Harris exchange.
Yeah.
I think that was probably okay for her. I think what they did wrong, frankly, is I don't think you match personality with policies. And I think the number one feedback for Democrats is out of sincerity and out of really deeply held policy, they often sound like they're lecturing people. And there's a bit of lecturing, I think, that people react to and respond to with the Democratic message right now. And where I think Donald Trump is mostly emotionally based and he is grievance based, and those are really motivating for people, particularly people who are feeling disenfranchised by either their socioeconomics. And so you're matching this emotional language with what I think felt like a little bit of a lecture. So some of it was just tone and staying on focus. And I don't know that it was, like, and then I think it was 1,000 cuts. Like, we're hearing a lot of analysis about the black male vote and also the Latino or the Latinx vote. Now, it only accounts for about 0.5 percentage point. So in totality, like, we hear, black men have moved to the Republican Party. Well, I would tell you that I think they moved to Donald Trump, which I think is not the same thing. But also, 9 out of 10 black people voted for Democrats. And now it's 8.5 out of 10. In this election, that is hugely significant. Yeah. But I don't know that I would say black people have moved to or away from. I think that what Donald Trump has done well is built a personality cult around him and his offerings, and he has an ability to emotionally speak mostly to people's grievances, which is really powerful. And the Democrats, I think, often respond to that by lecturing, and that's just not a good matchup.
So I'm going to disagree with Mara on this.
This is shocking.
Shocking, right? I'm telling you, it's all about the policy. That is what it is about. And for someone like me who cares a lot about the policy and has been saying for 3 years that the policies that are being pushed by the Biden-Harris administration do not work, whether it's what caused inflation, whether it's what causes energy prices to go up or prices at the grocery stores to go through the roof, that is where you saw the pushback come on the Democrats and the Democratic Party, and more specifically the Biden-Harris administration. And call them Biden or call them Harris, two peas in a pod as far as policy goes. Now, interestingly enough, during the election, you saw Harris walk away from all of those policies, which I thought, when I saw that happening, that's when I thought Trump has an honest chance of winning this, because the rest of the nation is starting to see what a lot of us have been saying is the problem. And a couple interesting points that I want to point out, and these are the numbers. Trump's support among Hispanics went up 14%. There's a couple reasons for that, but I think one of those reasons was the open border policy. Not all of it. There's several things behind it, but I think the open border policy, when you talk to the Hispanic community here, they're not happy about the open border policy.
Can I put a caveat on your numbers? These are of Republicans' numbers. So this isn't 14% of the Hispanic population.
Right.
This is 14% of traditional Hispanic votes.
Okay.
That is fair. But they're up 14%, which is a huge number. I mean, I think the number went to Trump got 45% this go around, which is a huge number for a Republican to get 45%. It's either 45% or 54% that he got. But
I feel like border policy's got to be one of the big ones for a lot of people in this race, because I think there was a far swing in one direction from where we were at on border policy, and I think this is a swing back where people were like, maybe that was too far.
Trump got 46% of the Hispanic vote. That's huge for Trump to get 46% of the Hispanic vote. But a couple other interesting ones. Young people. Again, this is tomorrow's point. This is among the Republicans. But 18 to 29, it was up 7% over 2020.
Do you think it has anything to do with all those podcasts he hit up with those long conversations?
It does. And I'm going to say this, Heidi, and this is not a knock on KUTV, because I believe KUTV to be fair, honest, good journalism and good media. However, if I was the media across this country, the Main Street media, I would be extremely concerned about what we just saw happen. You have the Rogan podcasts that are significantly higher numbers than what CNN has, and those podcasts are overtaking a lot of the mainstream media. And it's because I think a lot of the mainstream media is trying to push a narrative, and the American people are not buying into it. But I got one more point I want to bring up. We had a female on the ballot for, and females had a significant chance of winning.
So is America a racist, misogynist, as we're hearing,
No,
or was she just the wrong candidate?
I think it was the wrong policy. Again, I'm going to come back to policy. She should have performed better than what Biden did among female voters. Trump got 3% more of the women vote this go around, and it's because I asked a couple of my female friends this since election night. Why did he do better amongst the female than what Biden did? And what I keep hearing over and over is the inflation. The females are out shopping at the grocery stores. They're having to make a decision as to what food they put on their table, and they can only stretch their budget so far. That's why. And then also too, I'm going to push again. This whole allowing biological males to compete in female sports and to use female bathrooms and locker rooms. These policies have went too far, and I think that's what you saw get pushed back on. And again, if the establishment, I also feel like it was establishment, anti-establishment vote again. And if I was part of the establishment, whether that's the mainstream media, whether that was the establishment inside of Washington, D.C., or even the establishment inside of Utah, if you want to call it that, people need to recognize it and wake up and be more in tune with the citizens.
Do you agree with him at all that there might be a moderation in policies for Democrats, or no?
No, this was not about policy. And I think that is what Democrats need to start understanding. That this was, and I think it shows in that who had the most traction.
So you think people do not want a female president?
I think that Joe Rogan is not an analyst, he's not a political scientist, but he is an influencer. And I think that interview with Joe Rogan, I mean, if you talk to anyone under 25, that was a pivotal moment. When I talked to my daughter last night, she said, well, Mom, did you see the Joe Rogan interview? Like, that was her, and she voted for Kamala Harris. And
did she listen to it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's not a Trump fan, but I will say where Mike and I completely disagree, and I'm not going to argue with you on details today, but I don't think that Trump has offered any policy. I think Trump has done a really good job offering an emotional connection on disgruntled issues. And I think that what they need to listen to is you need a more compelling and emotional argument. Americans, by and large, don't vote on policy, and locals don't. I mean, that's, like, I've been a political consultant for 30 years, and I will tell you that the majority, 25%, and all the listeners of this podcast will vote on policy. But most people just don't have the time or inclination. I'm not saying they don't care. I'm not qualifying their values. But Trump did a better job simplifying things, and he did a better job emotionally connecting, and he used influencers, not mainstream channels.
Mara is right. I'm not going to disagree on that part of where Mara's coming from, because she is right. I mean, he ran a better campaign, he did all the things. But I'm just going to tell you, and again, you brought up the Joe Rogan podcast again. Where was Joe Rogan 4, 5, 6 years ago? He leaned left. Where is Joe Rogan today? He leans right.
He's pretty inconsistent. I mean, the one thing I like about Joe Rogan is Joe Rogan pushes his individual issues, and I don't think he cares that much about where he is on the political spectrum.
He does, and I talked to him. I had the opportunity to sit down and go to dinner with him, and I listened to what he was saying. And Joe Rogan used to be left. Where is Joe Rogan today? He's right.
So here's
and
the
it's
good news,
because of the
Mike.
policy.
You
It's
guys
because of the
have
policy.
a chance to prove.
Yeah.
Here's what I am looking forward to is Donald Trump attempting to govern. Because right now you ran the boards, and so you can say all you want about whether the Democrats were right or wrong. I will tell you it is a divided nation, and if you enter this with arrogance, you will lose. You lost the midterms. I would look to 2026, and instead of pounding the chest, when he gets done punishing, which will be a huge mistake, because he will waste an enormous amount of time and political energy doing that. And then what's going to happen to Donald Trump is after a year, he either lies about his promises. If he doesn't do it, he's a liar. If he does do it, he's wasting time.
No, I'm saying on punishing. I don't think he's going to.
He's told people over and over that he's going to punish. So either he lied about it or he's wasting time. Those are the
which is just probably politicking.
But I just think that after his first year, what I hope Trump realizes is after his first year, he's a lame duck. We know he can't stand for re-election. We know he's going to be 82 going on 83. He has fewer time, and you know what he has is he probably has maybe a consenting House and Senate. But instead of posturing, because there are zero policies, unless I read Project 2025, in which I'm not very excited. Yeah. His policy right now on immigration is mass deportation. That's not a policy.
No, it's not. It's going back to where it was before. But anyways, you're not wrong. You're not wrong on the fact that, look, the Republicans have the work cut out for them, specifically over the next 2 years, but certainly over the next 4 years. I don't believe Trump's going to be a lame duck after the first year because of who his vice presidential pick was. It was brilliant for him to pick.
But presidents aren't vice presidents. So where is J.D. Vance going to separate from Donald Trump? Where will he have a separate agenda?
We're going to see what happens over the last part of Trump's...
But you believe that J.D. Vance will have a separate agenda than Donald Trump?
I think J.D. Vance will take over Donald Trump's agenda towards the latter part of it. But here's a couple things I really want to hit home on. Look, I agree with you. The Republicans have their work cut out for them over the next 2 years because it is not going to be easy to govern. We will get control of the Senate. We have the presidency. It looks like we will maintain control of the House with a very, very slim margin.
It's going to be within 5 seats likely in the House to either side.
That is going to be a really difficult place to govern from. And the American people are going to expect outcomes, to Mara's point.
Which means I think they're going to have to sit down at the table and talk to both sides and get things done, which I think is an important thing to do. So hopefully that will happen.
Well, hopefully people work together collaboratively to do what's best for our nation. And that's what I really hope the Republican Party does, and I hope that they recognize. And if we don't, it will be detrimental to us in 2026 and 2028.
Yeah. One thing that was interesting to me in listening to some of those longer format podcasts when, I can't remember, I think this was the Joe Rogan podcast, where Trump talked about when he went to Washington that he'd never really been in Washington. He was a New York guy, and he was listening to a lot of other people about who to appoint, and he admitted making some bad decisions in who he put into some of those important cabinet places. And so it seems to me, and it's hard to know till he actually does it, that maybe he learned some lessons. It seems like he's got work that's been done in the last couple of months in case he was winning, trying to build a cabinet, and hopefully he makes more educated decisions because he's been in Washington. But it sounds like he let himself be influenced by people that at least knew Washington, but maybe were not in the best interest.
Heidi, you're spot on, and I'm just telling you, and I get it, for those people that don't like Trump, they're going to view him from the same lens. But from somebody who likes Trump, I watched Trump from 2016 to 2020 to Trump today, 2024. And it is a stark contrast different. He is, you say what you want about Donald Trump, but he is a smart person. Yes, I think some of us would like him to tone down the rhetoric a little bit more than what he has. But you look at where he was at and where he's at today, he's a much different person and a 10 times better candidate. And I think that's why you saw such successful numbers.
So as someone who doesn't like Donald Trump, what I am concerned about is when he says, oh, he learned so much, I don't see that as a great statement. I think that he isn't a student of history, he's not a student of government, and he's not a respecter of tradition. And so for many people, that's why they like him, is this, he lacks respect for a system. and he lacks respect for informal systems. And I think what he is saying is, oh, I learned what was formal and what was informal, and I'm planning to blow the place up. And I think for many people, that's an appealing statement. I will say for me, as a historian and a political scientist, I am not very excited about a president who doesn't understand U.S. history and a president who doesn't respect the systems, because I think you are going to see corruption in his administration. I think you're going to see aggrandizement, and I think you're going to see people not pick area experts. And I think he's confusing loyalty with expertise. So just as
that's
someone,
what he did. That's what he did wrong the first time.
No, I think before he picked experts, and he didn't like that they were loyal to the country and not to him. And I do not think he'll make that mistake again. I think he will pick only people loyal to his personality.
Trump does not disrespect the system. He disrespects incompetence. And if you watch Trump, there is a lot of incompetence in our current system
and
right
you
now,
and I
and
disagree
that is what America is fed up with, is the incompetence inside of Washington D.C. right now, and that is why you're seeing Trump saying, "I disrespect," or it feels like Trump disrespects the system. But if you come back to what he says, it's the incompetence.
If I come back to what Trump says, Mike, if you would like me to operate from what Trump says, I am happy to do that. But every time I operate from what Trump says, you guys go, "Oh, yeah, he just says those things."
Do you see any Utahns that will end up in his administration when you talk about loyalty over whether somebody's, right for the role? We see Senator Mike Lee, who's been very loyal to him. We've seen former U.S. Attorney to Utah, Brett Tolman, who's worked with him on a few issues. Do we see any names or anyone from Utah that might get sucked into the Trump administration?
Utah's in a really good position when it comes to relationships, is what I would say. I also think Utahns are such pleasers that he will like that. We are big kiss-ups, and I think he will like that. And I mean, Lee has been chasing this ring since as long as he has lived, and so I think you're going to see Lee doing almost anything.
Lee led the charge against Donald Trump.
For 10 minutes, everyone led the charge until y'all were paid off and saw that where the power goes, so go you. And so I think Utahns, what I will say is, I'm not sure if working for Trump is what holds the most power. I do think that Utahns are in a really good position when it comes to relationships. I think a good example of that is Speaker Schultz. I think those who choose to work for him will also end up being chewed up and spit out. I mean, Donald Trump is like working for Rocky Anderson. It is a fool's errand. And so I will just say that I think you'd be better off to be a distant friend of Trump than work for him.
So to your original question, Heidi, I do think that Senator Lee is on a short list. I don't know about Tolman. There's a lot of speculation, and I truly don't know. But I think Department of Justice is an area where you may see Senator Lee go. Look, there's the Trump team and the Trump family and President Donald Trump have a lot of respect for Senator Mike Lee. And so I do think that whether or not he gets one of those positions, I almost guarantee you he is being considered for a position inside the cabinet.
I think he has been in the past.
Or he has been.
His name's been on some lists, but how serious he was considered, I don't know.
Well, I can tell you that it's serious, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Supreme Court. You could see a Senator Lee be put on the Supreme Court as well.
Yeah, we've heard that bantied around. I want to get to local issues, but really quickly, when we're looking at some of the exit numbers, I saw some on Fox News where they were looking at people by religion, and the one religion that was most loyal to Trump, Mormons, came up at 64%. I don't know if that's surprising or not. It's definitely been an interesting journey from 2016 to now.
I'm going to come back to the policy. I know Mara disagrees with me, but it's the policies of the left that turned the Mormons off and has turned America off.
Would you agree with him on that?
No, I mean, I can continue to disagree if you
No.
want me to.
No, that's okay.
And I also think this version of exit polls hasn't been double vetted. So I
Yeah.
loved it as an anecdote, but I will tell you that in Utah, he did not. We were one of two states, and if you say that we're the Mormon enclave, we did not overperform for Trump. We never have overperformed. No, we voted for Trump. Yeah. We just didn't know.
Voter turnout here in Utah is not even great for a presidential election.
Okay.
73%.
Yeah.
Historically,
I think in the 80s.
No, I think, unless I looked at it wrong, let's see what
Well,
Deidre
I
Henderson
think-
sent out today.
I think it was down a little bit from where it was in 2020.
2020 was 9.1.
Yeah.
2016 was 82.
But
Oh yeah,
I think
we're way below that.
But I think it's up over what it has been historically, but lower than what it was.
73%.
Oh,
but
then that's tanking.
Yeah, it's terrible. Utah County, 60% voter turnout.
Well, they had so many.
Hold on, I want to come back to a
Troubles.
point really quick that you brought up, and that was that Trump did better in all states except for 2 states in
Utah and Washington
Now-
went left.
Well, that was based off initial polls. We had a couple things that inside of elections that delayed some of the voting, and it's changed today. So this morning, the new numbers got updated, and actually, Trump did better in 2024 than he did in 2028 in Utah.
In Utah, interesting.
Yes, in 2028 it was 2020 it was 58.1%, and the numbers that came out today, because there are still a lot of ballots that have not been counted. That's
Utah
what
and
I kept saying.
Arizona, we're slow rolling.
We're a little bit behind. We got some things, honestly, we need to work on there. But I'm going to come back. So today he's sitting above 60%. Trump has never been above 60%. And right now he's sitting at 60.7%. I think that number
So
will
he did
continue
better
to climb.
than when he had a third-party challenger.
Woo! Well, last year he didn't have a third-party challenger.
I
In
just
2016 he
love
had Evan
Utah.
Evan
McMullen.
McMullen,
But
yeah.
he didn't get he got 45% in 2016. But again, last 2020 he didn't have a third-party challenger, and I
Right.
think he got 56%.
One thing I
So-
did want to mention too before we move on to local races is that I think a lot of people who were voting were thinking about abortion and women's rights when they were voting. I was thinking that when you're thinking about those issues, because of how the Supreme Court ruled, you really should be looking at who you're voting for governor and legislator, because that's where the decisions are being made right now. And in 7 states, they expanded access in this last election for abortion, and then 2 states, Florida, and I forget the other one, Nebraska, it failed. And so I think that's important when everyone gets so focused on these presidential races where one side or the other says, I'm going to fix this and I'll give you all the rights or whatever. The Supreme Court has ruled and it's sent it to the states. So if you have an issue or you care one side or the other, talk to your governor, talk to your legislators, and elect people that you want involved in that conversation, because that's where that conversation's happening. So
Recreational marijuana passed in 2 states, rejected in 3.
yeah, that was super surprising to me that it did pass, because I'm looking at the states that have passed it. I don't think that their crime numbers have gone
They
down,
went
their
up.
crash numbers have gone up. And so when you
Social
look at
issues
overall
have went up.
safety, it just doesn't seem like those states are heading in the right direction. Maybe I'm wrong, but from what I've seen anecdotally, it doesn't seem like legalizing marijuana has been a good decision. But I don't know. Yeah. You're a Denver girl. When you go there, do you feel like you're in
Love
Amsterdam?
Hot shops.
Yeah.
Love hot shops. Revenues off the chain there.
It's good for tax
and,
money.
Local districts who got the first share of it. So if you're making an economic argument, the cities in Denver, the first round of cities
Yeah.
in Denver, did really well. But I mean, on net, it levels out, and then you just have a lot of hot shops.
Here in Utah, when we went into election day, on election morning, voter turnout was at 53%. Now we're at 73%. So on election day, there was either 20% that were dropping off their ballots or showed up to vote in person. We had some crazy long lines. Mara, our county clerks do a great job organizing these elections and getting things ready. But from what we're seeing in the last couple presidential elections, are we not prepared enough for the people who are showing up? Or how do you guess, I guess?
Oh my gosh, we were so prepared this year. Our clerks did a stellar job, as long as you put an asterisk next to Utah County Clerk's name. That guy was ill-prepared, he was a day late, he was $1 short. He's the one that said nobody should trust the mail, you should show up same day. The dude did not get enough paper, and he didn't get enough magenta ink, which is like listening to some Bush League strategy. So hats off to the lieutenant governor, who said, hey, listen, I'm gonna take the expense of flying a plane to Arizona, make sure we have it, because I don't think this guy is prepared. This guy essentially blamed voters for coming. So I if you're listening from Utah County, I'm not gonna be veiled about that. You might wanna boot your county clerk. But other than that, in which it was an individual who wasn't prepared, our clerks, not only from the high watermark in 2020 of 90% down to Tuesday, they were rocking and rolling. Weaver had a couple of problems and they solved them. Utah County did have, and one of the key things was Lieutenant Governor Henderson, I'm going to say like 9 in the morning on election day, listen, if you are standing in line at 8 p.m., you will get to vote.
Yeah.
And then she said to all the clerks, you will all hold every single ballot, you'll hold your counting until every Utahn head vote. For those of us who were watching, that means by 10:15, 10:30, they were releasing the first numbers. But she was communicating well, she was coordinating well. I thought our clerks did a stellar job, except I'm going to put an asterisk by Utah County.
It's such a, we have counties that run amazing elections, and then we have counties that need some help, and all across the state. And I think, overall, we have a great system here in the state of Utah. However, we have some work that we need to do. We have audits, we see the audits, we know where it's at. We need to do a better job holding the counties responsible that are not following and doing a good job.
Now, to be clear, we had no ballot problems. We had no counting issues.
Yeah.
We've had no machinery problems. We've had no poll watching or secondary. We had front end, how long it took you to vote, how long it took you to originally register. We had quite a few same day registrants, how long that was taking, and then a supply problem,
Yeah.
which is just silly. So I will say, we have not seen or heard of anybody complaining about the count side of the ballot.
Yeah, I haven't seen any issues there. It just seemed, I called the elections office on election night to see where some of the major problems were. Utah County was having issues, but we did see long lines as far south as St. George. West Valley had a couple hour lines. Apparently at the Hogle Zoo, you can vote up there. They had a couple hour wait in the evening when it was getting late. And then up at the Weber County Fairgrounds, they're having issues on election night.
When I found out, and Weber County is, and this isn't just my opinion because I'm from Weber County, but we have an audit that shows Weber County is one of the better ones, so I'm not being too critical here. But when you have one polling location, well, there's two polling locations inside of Weber County where you could go and vote. One was in the Ogden Valley, and one was at the Weber County Fairgrounds. We gotta have more access. We've gotta have more access. County clerks need to open up more
polling locations.
Have they gotten rid of some of the
problem is they don't want to spend the money, and that's a problem.
That's why your support will be helpful.
But historically, it's not the state's responsibility to fund the local elections. That's the county's job is to pay for it.
This was the presidential election there, my friend.
My question is, did they sell off all the voting booths and things that we had? Because we used to all just vote in person, so where did it all go? Because I would assume that infrastructure was here at some point. I don't know if we just burned it in a pile.
The state spent less money back then than what the state spends today. Everybody wants to point the finger at the state. The state's not the problem.
Oh, you guys are a big problem.
Not the problem on the cost. Look, there's a cost associated with voting. Right now, the system is borne by the counties. And I'm not blaming the county clerks. It's probably more so the county commissioners that don't want to put it in their budget. But they've got to do a better job in increasing the budgets on our elections. It's going to be one of the things we talk about this next session.
Why are you talking about if it's their problem? Why should leave them alone?
Because we're going to do our best to push it to get.
This is what I'm saying. You guys mandate, you waggle your fingers, and then you.
Mara mentioned how late we were getting numbers, and this is the rule now. Governor Cox said, I made this rule when I was lieutenant governor. We're keeping it this way. Do we like that they're holding those numbers until everyone's done voting?
Yes, because I was really annoyed that AP called Utah for Trump, and I know what, no one.
When not one vote was released.
But it was no votes released, and I'm like, this is just bad form.
Yeah.
If someone is standing in line and going, oh wait a minute, you've already called my state. So I think this is brilliant because votes matter, and the more granular, the more grassroots you are, you realize that one vote totally matters. It matters that people are standing in line. It matters that people care. It matters that we fund this. This is a fundamental, this is what differentiates us from other nations, is this voting. And so absolutely, until everyone's had a chance, you hold the vote.
100% agree. I think absolutely you can't be announcing results while you still have people standing in line waiting for those.
And I think I've shared this story that I was annoyed that they'd already announced my first time voting, and I was like, But now when I'm on TV and I know I have from 10 to 10:30, I'm like, release the numbers.
I know, it is frustrating when you're sitting there watching. I'm one of the ones texting like, why have we not released our numbers yet? Where are they at? We all want to know. It is frustrating, but it's more important we get the policy right, and that is good policy.
That is good policy. And the Associated Press should put themselves in timeout because they called our Senate race and the president before any numbers were released. And I'm like, we know from polls that it's going to go that way, but it's just bad form. And I don't think it shows any trust when you're calling elections
And
when not
AP
one
is
vote's
usually
released.
better than that. I mean, they
Yeah.
are the gold standard, but I was like, come on, guys. this
Yeah,
isn't
that was
cool.
not gold standard
If
for
you were
me.
watching Fox News, it was really frustrating. That
Well,
they
if you,
haven't. But
News
they
Nation,
is the right way
News
to do it.
Nation was
Right way to
popping
do it.
out with their things. They were, News Nation, I gotta give them for better or worse, they were 10 minutes in front of everybody.
Yeah.
Were they
They were
really?
living on the edge.
Just looking at our Utah congressional races, interestingly enough, the highest finish so far, the last time I checked the numbers, was CD3, which is Dr. Mike Kennedy, who won there. He had 65%. The rest of them were around 60 to 63%. So an impressive win for him. All of them Republicans, of course, headed that way as people were expecting, but solid wins for all of them. And John Curtis winning with 63% for his Senate seat. So
John Curtis was interesting, and I really liked this. John Curtis decided to have his election night party in Provo, and he decided to have it separately. And I don't think it was a distancing exercise. I think it was just about his campaign and about being more with friends and family. I kind of liked it because I think it made it less raw meat, red meat partisan. Both the Republicans and the Democratic Party had a couple of different locations this year. The governor did his own thing, John Curtis did his own thing, and then the party did their own thing.
Yeah.
You saw Brian King did his own thing, the party.
Celeste Malloy was down in Cedar City.
So I didn't hate this. I mean, it made it harder to cover for the press.
Yeah, because we only
I
have
know
so
that
many
was a
people.
pain,
Yeah.
But I didn't hate it, and I like, other than the miking was really bad, so most of us couldn't hear. I don't know, I kind of like that John Curtis did his own thing.
I'm a team player. I would rather have one party.
It did make it hard for covering, but honestly, there were so many problems with long lines and vote issues that we actually ended up pulling most of our reporters from those parties that were spread out across the area and just sent them to where there were issues with polling, because we also knew that if there were people in line that we weren't going to be getting numbers and returns or acceptance speeches, so we just ended up ditching those parties. So sorry to the candidates.
Well, and I think, again, you wouldn't have ditched those parties if you would have had everybody congregated together and had everybody there. Those parties would not have been ditched, I promise you that.
Yeah, you
so I
would
think
have
it's
only had to
better
kept
for the
one person.
population and the people as well to have, whether you're a Democrat or you're a Republican, have your parties together.
All right, we'll see if it happens next time.
Yeah.
And one thing too, I know that a lot of people who are covering the governor's race were annoyed because the governor's mansion is not a big place to have a bunch of reporters in. So they had to stand outside the mansion and just wait for hours. So that was a long wait. In the governor's race, Spencer Cox, as people expected, won. It was about 56% last time I saw. Brian King, just over 30%. And Phil Lyman, who was hoping that he would win, did not win, as you might have guessed, at 8%. The first poll we saw in November showed him at 5%, and then maybe an overly optimistic poll that came out just a week before the election, putting him at 15%. It looks like he's going to finish somewhere between 8 and 9%. Mike, is that what you expected, or did you think that his finish would be bigger than that?
I suspected that Phil Lemon would probably be around 10%, give or take a little bit. I did think Brian King would do better than what he did at 30%. I was really worried about that. And it was, and Mara probably disagrees with me on this, but from my perspective, it seemed like this year the Democrats were more organized, better funded, and there was more enthusiasm around Democrats inside of Utah. And emphasis put nationally on Democrats inside of Utah, and they felt like they really had a shot. At the governor's race, I thought Brian King would probably be in the around the 40% number.
I thought he would be higher as well. I thought he was a good candidate. Nothing against Peterson, who ran last year, but I think that Brian King and his experience and what people know of him on the legislature was going to give him a little bit of a bigger leg up.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't see a great coordinated campaign. I didn't see great block and tackling. I don't think we're doing a good job bundling from national. So I'm really sort of talking about the tactics of campaigning, and I don't think that the Democrats have the chops that they have in the past. You don't see them raising as much money as we have had in the past. I mean, we have had some powerhouse years where I thought Brian King was a great candidate, and I think what you saw is sort of the power of just him, evaluating him. I think he's a moderate. I mean, he's a Utah Democrat. He
plays himself as a moderate, but Brian King is no moderate.
Brian King is my state representative, and I, as a moderate as well, believe that he's moderate. But I thought he was a terrific candidate. I will say, my takeaway from gubernatorial is Spencer Cox has got to feel great about that night.
Well,
I think that's him outperforming all the poll numbers, with a split to come in at 56.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a chance that he was going to govern under 50, which makes him the governor. But
Yeah.
that is
Polls,
like a situation
yeah.
you don't want.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm Governor Cox, it reminded me of, we started analyzing the Mike Leavitt race, because one of the things I do think that's happening to the Utah Republican Party is that let's go back to the olden times. In '92, Merrill Cook, a fave.
Yeah.
So Merrill Cook was a Republican member of Congress, got disenfranchised with the Republican Party. At the time, it was sort of early Tea Party, which is a little bit of MAGA, like a little bit of that far right, that true right. And he started running as an independent. He self-financed, but in '92, Governor Leavitt got like 42% of the vote, and Merrill Cook got 32.
Yeah, he did well.
And then, you had Stuart Hansen, who was actually a really good Democratic candidate, come in the high 20s, which was performance at that time. Then you saw the next year, so this would have been Leavitt's reelected in '96, and Leavitt was in the 70s again. So I think that the Republicans have periodically, in the recent history, are having this noticeable struggle between whatever you want to call it, the far right, the MAGA right, and what would be sort of mainstream conservatives. And I thought that Governor Cox came out better than expected. He's got to feel good.
Yeah.
I would feel good if I were Governor Cox.
Thank you.
About those numbers.
Yeah, and he had a couple others in the race too, with Tommy Williams, the independent, getting just about 2%, and then Robert Latham close to 3% too.
Yeah.
So there was other candidates pulling numbers in that race, which was interesting. Speaking of Democrats, they had a pretty good night in Salt Lake County. Mayor Wilson won re-election with about 55%. County Council at large, right now it looks like the Democrat Pinckney is up by 51%, but that could still change.
I think that one changes.
That one
Michelle
changes?
Morris wins, yeah.
And then
I don't just look at them.
see, it's
Well,
tight. It
let me
keeps
tell
back and forth every time I look at it.
Well, I'll let you, and then I'll tell you about
Carlos
Salt Lake
Moreno, he pulled ahead last time I looked
Yeah.
at 54%, the Republican,
Okay.
and then in District 4, Ross Romero, the Democrat, is up by 61%, so probably wins that seat. And then County Council District 6 is Republican Dia Theodore with 52%. So there's a couple of those races that I don't think we'll know maybe for a couple weeks till it's done.
Well, here's the deal. There's still over 100,000 votes that still need to be counted inside Salt Lake County. If you watch the last 3 election cycles, I've seen it, I've been paying attention to it. Republicans do terrible on election night inside Salt Lake County. And then over the next week, the Republicans...
Because they vote in person?
Because they vote in person and they vote late. And for whatever it is, I mean, it's a trend that I've seen over the last 3 election cycles. And so I think you'll see Rochelle Morris overtake Pinckey in the county council seat. And I think you'll see one House seat, that's HD 30. I think you'll see Fred Cox pull ahead
West Valley.
on that one. I think he's within 300 votes right now.
So you don't think it's going to get flipped?
I don't think so. I think it'll be close. It's going to be really close.
I think it's going to be really
those numbers
close. I'm reading
tight.
it totally differently. I think this is going to be a good night for Salt Lake County Democrats, or a good time. I think they're going to take the council back. I also think what will be interesting is if Moreno wins, you've got 2 Latinos for the first time on the council, and if Pinckney wins, you'll have a black.
What am I missing? Because I think the only one up is Pinckey and Morris, and that's currently held by a Democrat. I don't think they're going to take the council.
Yeah, I think they will, because I think, so Romero's a hold, right, because that was Granado, but I think that Dia may not keep it.
You
And
think
I
Dia
that
loses?
I think she might, and then
Yeah, I don't think so.
But if you look at the House races came in strong, and very seldom do people split their
votes
from
locally.
House to council. Yeah,
Interesting.
That's interesting. Although we split it, what really showed a confused electorate is that ZAP was at 79%, but you saw the jail bond. It looks like it's going to fail. And sort of it's going to fail by 2 or 3.
Yeah, yesterday I pulled up the numbers. I didn't before we came in here again, but Salt Lake County jail bond was at 48%, and against was close to 52%. So that could change with the last votes coming in, but I don't think there was probably enough education on that too, if that's what they wanted people to pass
They
it.
didn't do it. I think they needed to educate
They
more.
barely did
Yeah,
a campaign.
yeah.
I think had you
They
done a
really did.
campaign,
They would've won.
I mean, well, particularly since it wasn't growing the jail. It was, I think
Combining.
if you were doubling the size of the jail, people might have been concerned, but it was actually just modernizing the jail, which that's a pretty unifying issue no matter what party you're in. And I thought that the alternative to incarceration with treatment should be a unifying issue. So that one did just feel like people didn't understand it.
And it's sad because that's one that we really needed
We
to
did.
pass. And so I'm a
hope
little
they
bit
go at
hopeful on
it
that.
again.
But I don't think it's going to happen because I've seen this happen over and over. So I think Mara's going to be proved to be wrong. I think it's going to be a bad night for Democrats, a bad election cycle for Democrats inside Salt Lake City as well. Because for the last 3 election cycles, the Republicans end up becoming more and more, get more and more votes over the next week. And you'll see that happen. And I think you'll see it happen. I think Morris will win. Dia will strengthen her lead. And I think there's the chance that the House maintains the number in Salt Lake County. And we haven't talked about HD10, which is in Weber County. Right now, there's only 94 votes.
Separating?
Separating, 94 votes for Rosemary Lesser's seat. I think you'll see that flip.
This
as
race
well.
was decided, I want to say, by less than 400 votes last time. I mean, like, this is a
500.
seat that just stays tight
it's tight.
year after year after year. West
It's
Valley
tight.
is a seat that stays tight year after
Which
year.
shows that's where your vote matters, because
Yeah.
some of those races are just down to like dozens of votes or whatever. So
Yeah, I mean,
So-
I think it is going to flip, which I think will totally change the balance of power in the House. And I think that Republicans will barely survive
Yeah.
this session.
All it takes is
That's
one
how-
lion.
That's how I see it.
Mara could be right. I think right now we have 61 members of the House Representative. I think we're going to be
That are
somewhere between
Republicans.
60 and 62 that are Republicans. We may lose a seat, but we could also pick up a seat. There's a chance we maintain the same. So
All
we'll
right.
see. It'll be interesting.
Yeah,
to
we'll
see
keep
what-
watching those numbers.
over the next few days.
constitutional amendments, I would love to know if anyone still voted on A and D just for the heck of it. But B and C both overwhelmingly passed. Constitutional Amendment B was 70% for. Constitutional Amendment C, 82%. Interestingly enough, I saw some people online after they passed talking about the sheriff's one, and some people were lamenting that they were surprised by it passing so much, saying, what if this becomes a problem and somebody needs to be fired, but we can't fire them because they've been elected. So there's been some people wondering after the fact
I'd like to
if it was
fire
the right
every
decision.
Democrat that gets elected, right? So
You only want Republican sheriffs?
You do not mean that.
maybe not everyone, but
You
pretty
do
close.
not mean that. You don't mean
Look,
that. I'll give you a chance to take that back.
I'm not going to take that back. I'm
So
joking about having fun, but listen to me.
Listen, Linda.
We have to. The fact that it would even be up for question whether or not we're going to elect our county sheriffs or have them appointed. Come on, it's always been our county sheriffs get elected. Our county sheriffs should always be elected by the people, period, end of story.
So what I thought was interesting about the two constitutional amendments is we had some polling on this, and it is a really good pollster. So again, I think the propensity is to say, oh, the pollster's bad. The pollsters are good, which I think means we're a bunch of limeouts at this point. Like, I think we must be really tricky about what we're going to do, because they were showing B performing pretty well, high 50s.
Yeah.
But they were showing C, the sheriff's one, at 51. Like, going into the night, it looked like it was going to squeak by, and it's close to 80, right? Didn't
Yeah,
it end
that
at
was
79
Yeah.
right
Yeah,
now?
it's
I mean,
high.
like, we just crushed it, which repetitively, the bane of my existence is that we treat constitutional measures as though the House has even paid any attention to what they're moving and changing in the Constitution. The House and Senate has grabbed so much power
Oh,
in the
my
last
heavens.
10 years through constitutional amendments. So while
Call
you know,
yourself into
you
session.
can do anything you want
Oh,
at this point. Pretty
whoa,
soon you're
whoa.
going to get away with voting. But it's interesting to me. I'll go back to my point. It's interesting to me how Utahns apparently do not have problems with amending our Constitution because they pass overwhelmingly.
They shouldn't, and they shouldn't. And let me tell you why. Because we're making it better. When you put all the power inside the executive branch, one person.
I just want a little bit of power.
One person.
At this point, I'm just looking for balance.
That's the only constitutional amendment that you could point to that we passed over the last several years that has taken power and put it inside the legislative branch. But we took it away from one person, the governor, and we spread it across 104 lawmakers, which inside gives your team, the Democrats, more power and more say in that process. And it keeps government closer to the people.
That's
That
what
is a
you
good
say.
thing.
I mean, I
That
don't
is a good
buy
thing.
what you're selling, but I hear what you're selling.
No, that's a good thing.
So are you going to try to bring A and D back, or are you going to let dead dogs lie.
Yeah, A's not coming back. It's unfortunate because it really would have been better for the education system, but it's not as important today as what it was before. We have a lot of options. The legislature has a lot of options that it can work through over the next several years to address some of the concerns with A. We'll have to see on D. It's too soon to tell on D. We'll see what happens as we move forward.
All right. Anything else surprise you on election night here in Utah that you weren't expecting or didn't see in the polls?
Not inside of Utah. I think I was a little bit nervous around the excitement around the Democrats. That had me a little bit nervous. I thought that the Democrats would do better inside of Utah than what they did. But
So
I'm grateful they didn't. I'm glad that Republicans did good all across the state.
I'll be interested to see who stayed home, because when you have a 73% voter turnout, that's not terrific on a presidential year.
Yeah, we were apparently not particularly energized by what was on the ballot this
So
year.
Democrats.
And that's really low performance
Yeah,
by Utahns.
if you compare, and again, I did not look at the final numbers, but up until Election Day, Democrats were behind where they were at in 2020 slightly.
We didn't have any
Inside of
in Utah. We
Inside.
didn't have any competitive congressional races, and it's been in the past where sometimes we'll have one of those congressional races. Do you think that possibly changed it, where it just made people feel like, meh?
I do not think that Utahns are that energized about Trump. And I don't think they were planning to vote for Harris. So, that just left them in nowhere land. And I think we focus too much on national politics. I think a mistake that we make over and over, I think the legislature should fund some public service announcements saying, it actually matters more who your state legislators are, and it matters more who your county folks are, and it matters more that you vote for school bonds actually, and it will impact your daily life. And I think that people don't know enough about that. They're distrusting of the information. I think that they don't think they're educated enough to vote, and so if the glamour ones aren't getting their attention, and I do think by and large, thank goodness, Utahns aren't sort of naturally gravitating towards Trump. I mean, that's my point of view. I'm going to share one statistic.
But Utahns are naturally gravitating towards Trump policies.
I don't know any of his policies. I haven't heard any. But I did learn something about the United States of America that was sent to me. So this is what I learned on
Is that the
election day.
kangaroo map?
Yeah, it's fascinating.
So I haven't seen this.
You haven't? Well, this
What
is
is this?
You got to talk with the microphone by your
Sorry,
mouth,
what is
because
this? I'm trying to look at
I was
Mara's phone.
accused of trying to filter out the Republican voice last time because you were too soft-spoken.
move away.
And move away
Oh.
from your mic. So if you're listening right now,
This-
I don't hate Mike. I invite him here.
This is the state of America and who has legalized kangaroo ownership, who can own without a permit, and who is just illegal. So there are 3 states in the United States that you can own a kangaroo without a permit. There are
I'm moving there.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 states where you can legally own a kangaroo with a permit.
What does this have
And
to
then
do
We
with
can
the
it?
barely
rest of
have
us,
chickens here in Utah.
Including Utah, you may not own a kangaroo. So if you'd like to do something about that.
I think you should, because do you know what one of the biggest talkers was before we actually got to the presidential election was that cute squirrel that New York murdered, and the raccoon.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be a state like New York where I'm owning some kind of wild animal in my house and then somebody can come in and murder it when I love it, I care for it, and I feed it.
Yeah, what do you have to say about
Yeah.
this issue?
Why are we even talking about kangaroos? I'm lost on this issue, and especially coming
Did you
from
follow
the
the squirrel
Democrats.
story though?
No, but I thought Democrats were all about freeing Shamu, okay, and turning things back out into the wild. Why do we want kangaroos in our houses? I don't.
Why don't we want kangaroos? Why are you anti-kangaroo?
Kangaroos are
Why are you
mean.
anti? They
Have
are
you seen-
mean.
Have you seen
They
the
are-
pictures of the ones that are jacked? I don't know what they do to
Yeah.
work out, but they look like they're at a bro gym.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just tell you, Mike, why this was sent to me. This was sent to me because Democrats need to distract them from reality.
Okay.
Yeah. It's something. I'm sorry if your races didn't go your way. If you ran and you lost, thank you for running anyways. I know it's a hard thing to put yourself out there, and to win and to lose, it's not
It
an
is.
easy thing.
It is, and there are so many candidates that worked really, really hard
Yeah.
and lost. And regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, you have to respect those that put themselves out there, that go through the scrutiny, that go through that refiner's process. that are doing it because they love the state of Utah or the community that they're looking to serve.
I need to run for real office someday, because the only thing I have to fall back on is I would run for student body office in junior high and high school, and I would win one year and then lose, win and then lose. It was every other year, every time.
Wow.
So I always had time to self-reflect,
Interesting.
but yes. So maybe people just needed a break from me, and then they're like, bring it back.
Bring it
Bring
back. We're
it
expecting
back.
you. We'll get you
Yeah.
to run next year.
Yeah, so, and I won last time I ran, so whatever my first race is, it needs to be a throwaway
We
race,
need to
because I will
think through
lose.
what the first race is, because the second one clearly needs to
I
be
know.
a bigger one.
Something kangaroo-ish. I'm feeling something with wild animals booking. And I'm going to talk to Mara. She'll help me through that. So thank you for being here. I look forward to you buying the hat for Mara so she can wear it, because you can't make someone who loses buy their own, like,
Right.
You're right. That's fair.
That's what I said.
Fair criticism.
No.
I'm going to buy the hat, and I can't wait.
Are
It's
you
going to be
choosing
great.
that
It's
as
going to
more?
be beautiful.
Yeah, don't even. You start talking like
Yes,
that.
I'm choosing.
I feel like if you want her to actually wear it, aside from one day, she might like the black MAGA hat, because
I-
you're just more of like a sleek, fashionable girl,
No.
and I feel like,
I'm not going black. I said
wants
pink.
red.
I said pink or red.
Yeah, don't insult me.
Yeah, I couldn't go black.
All right,
They
well-
don't stand out the same.
I think it'll stand out on Mara for sure.
Yes, I am going to pick the day that she wears it. I will be respectful, and she can have some input, but it's not going to be on a Sunday.
Okay, when she's at home doing laundry.
Exactly.
Well, thanks for joining in with us and listening. We will be back again next week, because we know something else wild will happen. We guarantee it.
Oh, that's fun.